Hey, hi all, welcome back to the channel again. Today we are going to discuss about creating dynamic forms. So, in Angular, if we want to create dynamic forms, we need to involve reactive forms approach. So, in order to, create dynamic forms, we cannot use template driven approach. So we need to use a reactive form approach itself. And then, uh, you need to have a JSON which actually has all configurations of the form and their controls in the sense the HTML controls like input type text, email, radio, checkboxes, select list, anything. And then you know it it should have the validator sections as well, right? So let's look at the example of the JSON configuration, so you will understand like what I am trying to say. If you look at this fields array, right? So this is a type of any array and it contains objects inside it, right? So these are three objects we have, and three objects in the sense three controls, and then for each control we have these kind of attributes. So now the type attribute, label, the name, ID, value, and validation. So what are all validations available, or we want to give, we can actually add them like this. If you have only one, then you don't need to add the array, but it is good to have an array even if you have only one. Okay, because in reactive form approach we have learned that we can pass a single validator as well in an array. There are actually no issues with it. So now for the email, as you can see, there are two validators we have, the name and the email, right? And after that, we have, a gender, which has, options with it. And then we are actually creating a select list, right? So this is how, we have the JSON file with us, or the JSON configuration. So based on this JSON configuration, we need to create the form, right? So now we have created this actually dynamic component by using this command, and this is the dynamic component. And what I did is I have actually included the common module and then the reactive forms module, and with that I have imported form group, form builder, and validators, right? And we are actually having these fields inside the app.ts file, and in the app.ts file we have imported the dynamic component from here, right? And where are these fields available? These fields are available inside the utils files, um, as I showed you, right, in the earlier. So these are the fields. Now these fields we are importing in the app.ts file, and from app.ts file we are passing these fields as an input to the dynamic component. So that's the reason we have created the input decorator form fields variable over here, and then we are actually expecting an array which will come from the parent component. So in our case, the parent component is nothing but app.ts, and at the app.html, as you can see, we have called this app dynamic component over here, and then we have passed the fields as input to this dynamic component, right? So this is how the setup is. And now as we have the fields available over here, let's try to create a form, right? To create a form, we will need the form builder, a form group, and a validators. And because this will become a reactive forms module, so reactive forms approach, so we are using, so that's the reason we have called imported the reactive forms module, and we are using ng-for and ng-if, so that's the reason we have imported common module as well. And then at the time of the component initialization has been done, after that we need to create a form, so that's the reason we have imported the we have actually implemented the ng on init method. So as you can see, a callback method that invoked immediately after the default change detector has checked the directives data or whatever it is, right? So everything, actually, if you want to learn more about lifecycle, you can go and watch my video based on, like, I have created a dedicated video on the Angular lifecycle hooks as well. So this is the method which actually invokes itself as soon as component finished its initialization or finished the instance creation. Okay. So at the time of that, we need to create a form. So to create a form, we need to add a method. So now let's add a method. Uh, so let's add a method create form, which will return us a form group. And then over here, we need to take a variable of type key of type string, and then value could be anything, right? So we need to initialize with this. Now, as we have learned in the reactive form approach, as you can see over here, we are actually creating a new form group, and we have a key, and then we have a form control over here. And as you can see in the form control, we have the value and then the validator section, right? So here, if you have a single validator, you can pass like this, or you can pass like this as well as an array. Okay, so there are no issues. Like this, it is also acceptable. So now we are doing the same thing but dynamically now. So let's go to the dynamic component. Now over here, let's take the validator first. Okay, but then before that, we need to loop through the form fields. So this dot form fields dot for each, and then we are getting a field, a particular field. So we need to extract whatever validators available for that particular field, and then we need to pass that to the method which we are going to write in a bit. So let's create a variable validators is equals to, let's say, empty for now. And now after this, group, right? So we are making use of this group variable. The key is nothing but a string type, right? So let's use field dot name over here, and after that we need to assign the array of it. So array, so as you can see in the reactive form component, um, for creating a form control, the first parameter we have a value, and the second parameter we have validators. So now we need to give the first parameter over here. So that is nothing but field dot value is, if it is available, then give it, or else the empty. Now we need to pass the validators over here. Okay, so now let's write down the validators function. Get validators. So this will actually expect an array of validators, and it will return us array of validators. Okay, now let's create a variable over here, const validators to return of type any array, and then we are initializing this with empty. Let's add a condition over here. If we have a validators, then only come inside, because we can have some fields which are optional and which doesn't have any kind of validations in the this config file, right, or the config.json. We may have fields like address or maybe the landmark thing, right? So those are that much not important, so we can avoid giving the validations on those fields. So in that case, if we do have validators, then only we need to return the validators and add it over here. And if we do not have any kind of validators, then in that case we will just return the empty array as is, right? So it will get passed as an empty array over here. Now let's loop through the validators. Validators dot for each. So we'll have the val Val is nothing but a validator over here, a particular validator. We need to check whether the val dot name is equals to required. Okay, so if it is a required validator, then validators to return dot push. Now this is the validator class and we need to use the required. So this is where we are making use of this validator class, right? And now else if, so we do have other type of validators as well. So val.name triple equals to if it is a pattern type of validator and the validator is nothing but an email, right? So let's use that val.validator is equals to email, something like that. This key we are making use of. So in this case we need to add the email validator over here like this. Okay, and at the end we need to return this, return this validator, and from here as well we need to return group. But before that we need to add group yes, so we need to add return this dot fb dot group, and then this group variable we need to pass it. Okay, so this is nothing but a form builder instance we have and we have injected it as a dependency over here, and then we are making use of this variable group method, and this group method actually you know takes the collection of controls, okay, a collection of child controls, and we are creating these child controls over here, and you can see the type, what type it expects actually. So as you can see, it has controls, key of string, and value could be anything, right? And then the options, abstract control options. So we are not passing those, right? So we are directly passing the controls. So these are all optional things like validators, async validators, and we are actually um passing them while creating a particular form control over here. Okay, so based on this data it will create this form control, and it will like it does the same thing what we have done over here. So it actually creates a form group, right? And it actually creates the key over here, the key what we have given over here, and the right hand side part it creates the new form control for us, and it returns that object to us, right? Now we need to assign that object to this variable dynamic form is equal to this dot create form, like this. So whatever it is returning, it is returning form group at the end, and we have a variable of type form group. So that's the reason we have assigned whatever it is returning to the dynamic form. So this is nothing but a type of form group. Now we do have validators, and okay, so why it is giving error? Okay, so it is inside the if statement. So at last we need to return it, right? So now it's time to create the HTML dynamically. So let's head over towards the dynamic component HTML. Let's create a form now. Form, and over here form group we need to assign the dynamic form, and then we do have a submit method. We have a method called onSubmit over here. We need to call this, and now we are making use of a ng container over here to loop. So we need to loop through the form fields we do have, right? So let field of form fields. Now over here we need to create a div class form group, This is the bootstrap class. Let's create a label now and string interpolate the field dot label. So this is the key actually which holds the value for the label. So this is the value for the label. So for this we have a name, okay, as a label. So now let's save, and again like we need to add the input type. So let's bind this type attribute as well. Field dot type, we do have id, so let's bind that id as well. Field dot id, then we have a name, bind it again. Field dot name, and after that we have form control name as well, right? Form control name, we need to bind it, which is nothing but field dot name. So we are making use of the same field dot name over here, as you can see in the ts file, field dot name. So we are making use of that particular name value, and the same name value we need to give over here as well, right? So let's close this. But then now okay, so what is the issue over here? Okay, I need to close the um okay. So now actually I forgot to close the double quotes over here. But yeah, so now we do have different kind of input elements we have, like text, email, and then select. So now the HTML of the select is different than the input type text and email, right? So this code will work for input type text and email, but it will not work for the select. So what we can do over here? So we can add a condition, ng container again. So if you don't know much about ng container, ng template, and ng content, then you can go and watch my video. I have a dedicated video on the ng content, ng template, and ng container. So let's use field.type not equals to select. Okay. So if the type is not equals to select, then add this. Else again, like create a separate container over here and just give a condition over here, ng if field.type not equals to um, because we do have two types over here, like text and email. So we need to add two conditions, like if we compare it with the not, like we need to add field.type not equals to text and not equals to email. So instead of adding two conditions, we can directly compare this with the select. Okay, if field.type is select, so in that case we need to add again div with class form group, and now over here we need to actually loop through the options as well. Okay, let me add the form control class over here, and the label will be same, and after that we need to add a select, right? Let me add a class form control to this. Okay, and now we need to loop through the options. ng for, right, let o of field dot options string interpolate whatever the value is, let's say o, and we need to bind the value of value attribute of this to whatever value it is. Okay, so this is how we can do, and again like over here as well we need to bind the form control name so that we could have the validations. Okay, so this is how we have created the form. If you look at the UI, you can see the form is there, name, email, and the gender. Now let's add two buttons. Let me copy the those two buttons from reactive form example. Let's copy this and paste it over here, right? So instead of user form group, we can use dynamic form, right? Let's save everything. And so as you can see, okay, so dynamic form dot invalid. Let's see now why it is not getting disabled. It is ng valid, I think. Let's do we have a validators attached to this? What it is saying? Okay, let's add for field dot name, or let's add that over here for the other labels as well, right? So this is how we have added. Let's refresh now. Okay, so it is saying it is valid only. Okay, field type, form control name, field dot name. Okay, let's see the validators. Validator is not required. Okay, actually we did not call this method over here. This dot get validators, and to this we need to pass field dot validations. So let's see what key it is from utils, right? So this is the validations key. We actually forgot to add this over here. So now let's save everything. So now as you can see, the button has got disabled now. Let's fill out the form. Test at test.com, gender is male. So now as you can see, the button has been enabled, right? Let's look at the value of the form in the onSubmit method. Console.log this.dynamic form dot controls and this.dynamic form dot valid, let's say. Okay, so it is actually getting valid, so we don't need to check it. Test at test.com, mail, let me submit it. Let's go to console. As you can see, we do have all three form controls over here, and then they have values as well, right? To reading the values, we have actually learned this in the reactive form approach video and in the validation sections as well, right? I can show you that example how we are reading the values. So as you can see, we are making use of object.keys, and then we are console logging the values, right? So if it is a nested form, then we are adding conditions and then again looping through the nested controls, right? Otherwise, we are reading the value from the top level controls as well. And in the reset, again, like we are resetting form. Let's do that over here as well. Dynamic form dot reset. So this is how it is. You require to have a JSON, um, configuration of the controls, HTML controls, and then based on that, you can dynamically create whatever, you can dynamically create the form controls and form group with the help of form builder, and then the validations as well. You can dynamically create a validators, right? And then you can pass those validators to this object, okay? And then Form group will actually, form builder does everything behind the scene. It actually takes this object and it converts that object to the form group, class, and then the each value of a particular key, it actually creates a new form control for that particular key, and it gives us the instance of this particular form group, right? It does the same thing what we have done manually over here. Okay, it gives us a new fresh instance of a form group with keys and form control instance, right? The form builder does this thing behind the scene for us, and then at HTML we can directly, now over here we are binding each and every property or attribute. Okay, and if you look at the HTML of the reactive form component template, we are not binding anything, we are giving it manual over here, right? You can see form control name also we are not binding it, but over here we are binding it. You can see form control name as well. So this is necessary to bind attributes or the properties whenever you are creating dynamic forms. Okay, and if you look at the validation section, right? So if you do not know about the validation, how to give validations, if you want to give validations to this as well, you can follow the same approach what we have learned in the form states and validation section. Okay, so you can go and watch that video for validations, and you can give the same kind of validations to this. So this is all about dynamic forms creation, and I hope you have liked this video. If you like it, so you can like and share this with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon. Thanks all guys, let's meet in next video.